Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Can Fin Homes Limited Q4 FY21 earnings conference call hosted by Investec Capital Services. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then zero on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Utsav Gogirwar from Investec Capital India. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Aisha. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Quarter 4 FY21 and Full Year FY21 earnings conference call of Can Fin Homes Limited. To discuss the financial performance of Can Fin Homes and to address your queries, we have with us today Mr. Girish Kousgi, MD and CEO of Can Fin Homes, Ms. Shamila, Business Head, and Prashant Joshi, CFO of Can Fin Homes Limited. I would now like to hand over to Mr. Girish Kousgi for his opening comments. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to all the investors. Thanks for this call. At the outset, we feel extremely happy for the way we've done in Q4 and also for the whole year. It was a challenging year. After COVID wave 1, literally 2 quarters we couldn't do any business. We started business, as I mentioned earlier, also in last week of May, and quarter 1 we disbursed about 400 crores. Quarter 2 we did little more than double of Q1, 825 crores, and quarter 3 we did 1,105 crores. Quarter 4 we crossed 2,000 crores. Now this 2,000 crores is all-time high in the history of Can Fin. And all-time numbers we did in February, and March was far better than Feb. So Feb and March is our 2 high months in the history of Can Fin. Why I'm saying this is that I think there were a lot of concerns in quarter 2, quarter 3 conference calls on the growth. And I always mentioned that when we have an event like COVID, it's very important that we focus more on portfolio, that's asset quality, liquidity, and cost, because business would come in. It's only a decision point. When we press the accelerator, definitely business is going to come in. And I always mentioned that from Q3 onwards, we will show growth. And accordingly, Q3 we did well. Q4 was far, far, far better than Q3. Q4, if you see on a YOY, we grew by 44%. Sequentially, we grew by over 80%. If you look at the whole year, we are down by 20%, right? And that's because we lost 62 quarters, and even third quarter was suboptimal, considering COVID impact, right? On asset quality, last quarter was 0.99%, including pro forma. 0.68 was NPA, and pro forma was the balance, so we were at 0.99. Quarter 4, we are at 0.91, so we reduced by 8 bits. So we feel that growth is only a question of the addition point, so we have to decide when we have to accelerate on growth, and that's the reason we had to time it appropriately last year. Now, if you look at the book, we were degrowing. Now, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, if you look at the book growth, it was not there at all. And it was negative some quarters. That is because of high BT, because the portfolio was at a high yield. And therefore, all the banks and large HFCs, they were quite aggressive on BT in. And for us, it is BT out. And therefore, we lost the book. We knew this is going to happen, and therefore we changed the strategy with respect to pricing on 2 counts. One is to retain our book, A. B, to also try and grow our disbursement so that we'll be able to grow our book. Now, even this was a big change what we did last year, and I always mentioned that because if you look at corporate lending amongst all the banks, it is still not taken off. I kept mentioning this in last 3-4 quarters that and therefore there will be no focus on banks especially into consumer loans and within consumer secured, within secured home, and within home as a segment PT, because that's the easiest way of growing book. And therefore, we thought that we need to change our pricing strategy, and therefore we changed it not only for incremental business but also for the book. And therefore, you will see some contraction in margins. If you remember, I always kept on saying that for a profile like Canfin, which is largely into affordable, focusing more on salaried, no corporate exposure, no focus on high-ticket loans, no developer exposure for a company of this profile. NIM of 3% instead of 2.4% is what we see in the long run. And therefore, when we want to grow, definitely it's a trade-off between profitability and growth. We will definitely do a fine balance between these two, protecting margins and profitability. As indicated in my earlier conference call, that NIM and spread would come down from the current levels. And accordingly, if you see NIM and spread for this quarter, definitely it has come down compared to last quarter. So this will happen over a period of time, and we will offset this with growth in volumes. Now, definitely there will be a question in terms of, I've already told that we will maintain 3 and 2.4, so definitely we'll protect that. We will not go below that. We'll try to balance both business and this. Now, there might be certain questions which may come up maybe after some time with respect to our revenue. So definitely, when we are aggressive on pricing and when incremental book is being sourced at a much lower yield, and some part of the portfolio is getting repriced because we want to retain our customers, definitely there will be impact on revenue because this is on the portfolio, not just on incremental. We did very well in quarter 4, but more so in Feb and March. So income won't be that high because we did only for Feb and March, hardly it will be 1 and 2 months for quarter 4. And therefore, you will see that our revenue was quite low if I have to compare on a yearly basis. So whole of last year and the previous year. But however, if you look at the margin, both gross and net profit, we have improved. I think most important is that we had set aside 76 crores towards COVID. Now, out of 76 crores, we are holding 70 crores. We had plan of writing some of the provisioning back, which would have got added to profit. We didn't do that considering the second wave. So we've just kept that 70 crores of provisioning, which is subset of 76 crores what we had done in last year towards COVID. This apart, we had provisioned 13 crores, which was partly for restructured provisioning and also partly for the interest write back. Right? So it was a conscious call, that we will not write back, though we had an option of writing it back in the month of March. Even if we had written it back, let's say, some amount of 70 crores, it would have got added to profit directly. In terms of market is pretty robust now because of second wave, because of lockdown in various states announced by various state governments. Definitely in last week or so, there has been some impact both on business and also on collections in most of the areas where we operate. And this is true for any company in financial space. So this is a quick brief on last quarter and the whole year. I would be happy to take any questions which you may have.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone.
Just one request. I think I saw the time was from 11:30 to 1. I'm saying, Utsav, please extend, even if it is by 30 or 45 minutes, so that everyone gets a chance to raise their query and get response from us.
Sure. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Nitin Jain from MK Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So just two questions on the cost to income ratio. So have we restated the number for Q3 because the earlier presentation says 13% and now for December 20 it says 16%. And the second question on this on similar topic is we've seen a significant jump in the cost to income ratio quarter on quarter. So where do we see this stabilizing? Thank you.
Yeah, the figures of 13% what we shown in the Q3 presentation is for the 9 months ending, because last investor conference was specifically solicited that better is to give on a quarter-on-quarter basis separately. So if we give only for the Q3, it is 16, it is 9 months, it is 13.
And also with respect to cost of funds, if you see for the whole year, it's about 15.5%. So it will be in that range only.
Yeah. And on the follow-up question, the jump quarter on quarter, where do we see it stabilizing?
So if you look at quarter 4, there was slightly increase in cost because of certain 3 or 4 items. One is we had to, salary revision is due and therefore we had to provide for that. And also because the whole of last year we had close to about 6-7 months being impacted by COVID, and therefore CSR spend got skewed towards quarter 3 and quarter 4. And also there was some spend on the digitization. And because of this, you will see there was slight increase in OPEX, and therefore impacting the cost. But if you look at the whole year, it's about 15.5%, and it will be on those lines in future as well.
Okay, perfect. Congratulations on the good set of numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Gurpreet Arora from Aviva Life India. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. So if you can highlight what will be a sourcing mix for the quarter and for the full year?
Okay, sourcing mix for the quarter. See, if you look at a sourcing mix, over last few quarters, especially last quarter, it is highly skewed towards bank borrowing. That's only because what really drives us the source is cost. So it so happened that in last few quarters we were able to raise from banks at a much better rate, and therefore you see the bank in the range of about 51%. And then we also saw that funding from NHB was coming at a lower cost, and therefore NHB is about 21%. Market is protected.
I'm sorry, sir. So by sourcing mix, I meant in terms of disbursements. What is the sourcing mix?
Okay. Sorry. I thought it's funding. Okay, fair enough. So in terms of sourcing, if you see at a portfolio level, 71% was salary and 29% was self-employed non-professional. And if you look at after COVID, especially after Q2, there was slight change in the sourcing mix. So the salary portion went up. And if I have to talk about incrementally, in quarter 4, 83% was salary and 17% was self-employed non-professional. That is because we don't see too many people in the SENP segment coming forward to avail the loan. However, we see slight increase in salaried segment. It's also because the recovery time for self-employed non-professionals from COVID with respect to business laws would be slightly longer.
Sir, in FY20, DSAs had mobilized 58% of our total sanctions. Is it a similar number for FY21 as well?
DSA is 50%. It's less.
DSA? Yeah. No, DSA sourcing would be in that ratio, only 50-50, maybe plus or minus 3-4%. Because we see there are 3-4 things. One is if you see the portfolio performance of DSA source and non-DSA source, there is no difference for us. That's because our DSA model is different. For us, the DSA model would work only with respect to lead generation or just sourcing the file. Once the file is sourced, we take over the entire case and we own the customer. We own the entire process right from the processing right till disbursement. Whereas if you typically see how it happens in the market is that DSA would source, complete the enrollment process, would be part of the entire processing, sanction process, then documentation till disbursement. So our model is different. To that extent, even our payout to DSAs is much lower than what the market pays. And therefore, we are not really worried about DSA proportion either increasing or decreasing as long as they're able to do our numbers and portfolio being intact.
Understood, sir. So my second question is, the Karnataka state government's decision to cut stamp duties on dwellings valued between 35 to 40 lakhs. Now, if I look at our incremental ticket size of 20 lakhs, and assuming an LTV of 80 to 90% on that, so this stamp duty cut would not benefit us largely. Is that assessment right, sir?
See, stamp duty cut, yes, it has definitely benefited. I think more than that, why there was increasing ticket size is because of our aggression and also because of our pricing strategy. So what happened was when we became competitive with respect to pricing, we were able to compete with some of the big banks and get into newer segments. For example, focusing on business within city limits, earlier we were not. So I think that ensured that we were able to source better profile customers, slightly higher ticket loans, and therefore there was increase in ticket size.
So that's fair enough, sir. So my question is that the Karnataka stamp duty cut is for units priced between 35 to 45 lakhs, and that's not our large target segment. Or if I can put it this way, if you can highlight what percentage of our portfolio can get benefited by this stamp duty cut.
See, we are very diversely we are diversified across geographies. So our business share from Karnataka is not very substantial. It used to be substantial about a couple of years back, but now we have many geographies contributing. So to that extent, the benefit would be little less because our if you look at the incremental sourcing, Karnataka would be in the range of about 20-21%. So the benefit also would be there to that extent because we are present in that space, affordable space.
Fair enough. So my next question is on the OPEX side. This pertains to the OPEX side. Since we maintain presence in 21 states and UTs, and while 69% of our business emanates from Southern India. So and outside Southern India, I have seen we have a large presence in Rajasthan, Maharashtra, UP, and Haryana with 45 odd branches. So in terms of OPEX or in terms of strategic presence, how does these two things reconcile for us, sir?
So if you look at business, South contributes approximately about 70%. If you look at number of branches, South will be in the range of 70%. If you look at our employee spread, South would be almost on similar lines. So in terms of employee productivity and contribution from each of these geographies, I think there is a fair bit of balance. Since we also track branch profitability, geography profitability, and employee productivity. So our contribution from South is more, and this will continue in future as well.
Thank you. We would request the current participant to please come back in the question queue for any follow-up questions, as we have several participants waiting for their turn. Also, we would request the participants to please limit your questions to 2 per participant. The next question is from the line of Manan Tijoriwala from ICICI Prudential Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi sir, I have a question on liabilities. So I understand around 25-26% is market borrowing. Out of this, how much would be commercial paper borrowing?
As of March end, it is 19% is the commercial papers and balance is from the NCDs. So what we do is we raise CP only as a backup. So we should have undrawn limits and OD limits. Only against that we take CP. CP is more for arbitrage with respect to cost and not for funding.
Right. And so this does not cause an ALM mismatch, is it?
Oh, no. See, whatever the funds we have raised by way of CP will be of a shorter nature. It is supported by the undrawn, your CC limit and OD limit. So in the ALM, the mismatch will not come into picture at all.
Right. So this one question on the yields. I think the calculated yields are coming at a lower level, around 8.55% of the AUM. Any reason for the discrepancy? Because your reported yield is around 9.47 or something.
So it is calculated on the daily product basis on the AUM on a daily basis. So it is a fractional calculation which is in order. If you take the weighted average concept on the overall quarterly basis, you are going to get this one because this is calculated on the daily product basis on the daily returns.
Right. So there is no reversal of income of income.
Hello?
Manan, we would request you to please repeat the question. Hello, Manan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm done with my question.
We would request the management to please go ahead. We would request the participants to please stay connected as we have lost the management.
Hello, we are there, madam. We can hear you.
Okay. Manan, I would request you to please go ahead with your question.
I'm done with my question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Siddharth Potika from the Investment Trust of India. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Just want to understand, is there
Sorry to interrupt. Siddharth, we would request you to come off speaker.
I am speaking on my handset directly.
Actually, we are not able to hear you clearly.
Okay, I'll try and speak a bit louder. Sir, is there an internal limit in terms of how much CP you can carry on your book as a percentage of borrowing? Because if I look at the LTV number, which is currently in vogue, the CP issuance is about 19% of overall borrowing.
See, as we told, we don't have a specific internal limit on the percentage-wise, but size-wise, we have an internal control. As we explained earlier, whatever the CP raise is not for funding, but for the cost leverage. The same is supported by the undrawn documented financial lines available with us. So if the financial line is more, comfort is there, we will be going for the CP. But the overall borrowing, we have a cap internally approved from the board. Within that, it will be there.
Sir, a follow-up to this, is there any discomfort in using normal debentures?
Your voice is not audible. A little louder, please.
Yeah. Is there any discomfort in using normal debentures, which are like 3-year, 5-year maturity? Because you have issued very few of them, and the older ones are maturing now.
So if you look at the cost of funds for raising the debentures, it was quite high. Okay, till last year we had an option, of not raising. But however, from this year onwards, we will be, we have to raise 25% of incremental borrowing. So from this year we will raise. Why we couldn't raise last 2 years is that it's purely because of the cost. So this year we have to raise, so we will raise, even though it will come at a slightly higher cost. Now, as far as CP, I want to stress the CP is only raised only if you have a backup of undrawn limits. So CP is used only for cost reduction purpose, not for lending. We don't raise CP and lend because we are very high on liquidity, very, very high on liquidity. As of now, we are covered for next 7 to 8 months. And at any given point in time, we will have 7 to 8 months of liquidity. During COVID time, we had 1 year, and now we are at about 7 to 8 months. So we are very high on liquidity, and therefore, since we have huge undrawn limits, we try to reduce the cost by raising CP.
Okay. Sir, if I can slip in one more question. What is our back book yield on advances, and that now the incremental advances that we are lending at, rates that we are lending at?
Okay, the yield is 9.49%, spread is 2.78, NIM is 3.69. Now, incremental cost of funds is 4.5%. This is for quarter 4.
And yield is 7.32.
Yield is 7.32.
2.78% is the spread for the incremental borrowing over incremental lending.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'll get back in this.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rahul Maheshwari from Ambit Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning. Am I audible?
Yeah, your voice is breaking.
Is it fine now?
Yeah, it is better.
Yeah. First of all, hope all well is at your end and your team during such time. So, two basic questions, sir. As you mentioned that the yield strategy, I think so 2 quarters back you had planned to make NIMs at 3% plus and spread at 2.4%, and during these 2 quarters the balance transfers were very high, looking at the yields where it is today. Are you at an incremental yield at 7.32% where you have said in current quarter, what could have been the balance transfer as a rate as compared to the strategy when you started at that time? What was the balance transfer rate at that time and now, and what are you witnessing in the April month and going forward, sir? Are we stabilized in terms of balance transfer for a time being? This is my first question. I'll ask later on second question.
Sure. So with respect to balance transfer, we saw during COVID time it was much higher than the BT out rate. So it was significantly higher. I mentioned the reason in the beginning of the conversation. So therefore we had to come out with this strategy. Now after this strategy, our BT out has drastically come down, significantly come down. And not only that, we are also able to grow our book by doing more disbursement incrementally.
So it would be very helpful if you can give a range, because my question is not only on balance transfer going drastically down, because that was the strategy which you thought and it is yielding, but also if you can highlight that there is a chance that there is a balance transfer in is also coming because the rate is now competitive to the bank rate, though 20-30 points lower, but still.
So just to give you a number, we used to be in the range of 250 crores BT out. It is only BT out during COVID time. That number for quarter 4 is 90. So two things have happened. If you have to compare that with the business what you have generated, it will be approximately 90 on 2000. Earlier it used to be 250. So BT out has substantially come down. It has helped us to retain the customers and also to grow our disbursement. 3 things have happened. One is BT out has come down, BT in has gone up.
How much that would be, sir? Any range or percentage?
So BT in, if you compare to 2000 may not be substantial, but if you compare to what it used to be earlier, we have tripled that amount.
Okay. And how is the April month and going forward the things are happening, sir? Any not quantitative number but qualitative highlights or insights would be very helpful to whether looking, because today just now the data had come, just to give you on Bombay there was a record high registration. So once again, how the things are taking place, again you are witnessing logistic challenges kicking in because of the Karnataka and other states going lockdown, or the things are going normal, at least on the housing side?
No, see, April till about a week back, everything was normal. Okay, now with lockdown being announced in literally every state in the country, so there will be impact on business and also on collections, and this is true for the entire industry. April, the start was very good. The first 15 days was really excellent, both on business as well as collections. I think once the lockdown started, definitely, because the SROs would be closed because these are announced by the state government, so nowhere SROs are open. And people, obviously mobility of people is a constraint now. So definitely in April, there will be hit on business and also on collections. I think the good part is that we had significantly covered in the first 15 days of April because of pent-up demand. We'll have to wait and watch how May would pan out. But as I mentioned earlier, so with respect to business, it's only a question of time. And with respect to collections, the efficiency might be lower, definitely lower, and this is true for everyone. Even I've been interacting with most of the HFCs and banks which are largely into housing. So April definitely would have some impact. It all depends on how May and June would pan out. But yes, as I told you, it's only a question of time to get back your collection efficiency in place and also business in place.
So, sir, business first 15 days, as you mentioned, that the things were normal and at a good health. So, in last 15 days, from 100x as an index, it might have gone down to 90 or 80x as an index level in terms of the business.
I didn't get a second question. So, the first 15 days was not normal; it was abnormal, substantially high business we did.
Okay.
After there was
later 20 days, suppose if you did 100 business on first 15 days as an index on overall basis, the fall has been 20-30%, sir, in later half of 15 days of April.
So if I have to do a April to April comparison, the fall would be, yes, you're right, it will be about 30%, yes.
Okay. And sir, last question, sir. As you mentioned that the strategy is very good on a growth side and it is to be competitive and all that. But how you look at on a profitable basis, because now at a lower yield, how the ROA of 2.2%, whether it will kick in through your cost efficiency or the other parts which is driving the source, or we shall take a new normal of ROA at a 1.82%, as you mentioned on a NIM side of 3% and the spread. So how it happens on the profitability side? If it would be very helpful if you can give that figures, that guidance or overview also.
So this strategy is not long term. This strategy was required, because there was toll on the book. Now we have reversed, not just reversed, we have disbursed highest ever number in Q4, and also Q3 was very good. So this is a short-term strategy. This may last for another maybe 2 quarters or 4 quarters or 6 quarters, depending on till when this strategy is required to be executed. The reason is very simple. Unless and until corporate and SME sector picks up, the focus is going to be more on this segment, and we don't want to lose market share. So when we say that, this 3 and 2.4 also would happen over a period of time. And this is not a long-term strategy. So maybe after 4 quarters or 3 quarters, if you feel that there is opportunity to price it differently in certain markets or certain profiles, for example, we would probably get back. However, the gap is not going to be 150 basis. It used to be earlier between us and the best HFC or bank in the country. Maybe it might be 0.5 or maybe 0.75%. So we would very, very carefully tread this balance between growth and profitability. All I'm saying is that since the growth is going to be substantial and we are high on liquidity, we have the benefit of cost. I think we should be able to manage that. Yes, this is a transition. We are already into it for last 2 quarters. This may take another 2 or 3 quarters time. I think there you'll know maybe at the end of 3 or 4 quarters time, you will find that everything is falling in place. So maybe in short run, there might be some impact on the margins and therefore profitability. I think with increase in volume, that will offset. And also, because of our OPEX coming down, to a certain extent, it's not going to reduce drastically, but yes, definitely to a certain extent, our OPEX also will come down because the employee productivity and business per branch should go up.
And sir, data question: how many employees? If it is mentioned in PPT, I'll go through it.
Achha, how many employees we have? We have close to 1,000 employees.
Thank you. We would request the current participant to please come back in the question queue for any follow-up questions, as we have several participants waiting for their turn. The next question is from the line of Ritika from Ocean Dial Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Sir, if you could kindly give some more color on the disbursements that we have seen this quarter, in terms of maybe some state-specific color or maybe in terms of while you've mentioned that BT in was tripled, but if you could kindly, give some more data points around there. And also, some color on salaried and self-employed. So where have you, so my question is, where have you seen this growth from? Is it more state specific? Is it salary, self-employed? And if you can again quantify the percentage of BT in.
Okay, so we've seen actually it is spread over quarter 3 and quarter 4, not just in quarter 4. We have seen geographies like Karnataka, then Andhra, Telangana, Maharashtra, Rajasthan and Gujarat contributing. Delhi not to that extent. So it is coming from most of the geographies where we are present, right? Because in a large state we may have very less number of branches, and therefore I'm just going by what is my number of branches and number of employees in this particular state. So we've got business from almost all the geographies, maybe barring NCR, right? So in terms of segments, we've seen salaried increasing from about 71% to about 83%. That is the impact of COVID wave 1. So this may continue. So we would see that going forward also about 80 to 82% would coming from salaried and 18% from self-employed, at least for next 3 to 4 quarters. Which means in a way the risk could be lower because salary would give us better portfolio quality. And if you have to look at segments, for example, within builder, I think builder share has increased. We funding for apartments, which used to be 25% on portfolio. I think incrementally that has increased because now we are competitive, and because we are competitive, lot of new segments have opened up for us. So today we are able to probably try and fund to a customer who wants to buy from a Cat A builder, which probably wasn't possible 4 quarters back. So I think these are 3 or 4 things from where we've got this kind of growth. And in terms of BT, yes, BT out has drastically come down. BT in has increased. As you can see, in quarter 4, our incremental book growth is more than 1,000 crores. So that this number we used to do probably in 9 months or 10 months earlier. Now we've done in 3 months' time. So there's been substantial positive impact on BT out and BT in.
Sure, sir. So on the second question on the yield front, sir, is it possible for you to help us understand that? So while it is very, your strategy is very clear and that's obviously bearing fruits. Some more color around that, this compression in yield that we've seen on a quarter-on-quarter basis, how much would have been because of repricing the back book and how much would have been because of, lower incremental? Is there a way we can get some color around that? Like with what I'm trying to understand is that how much of the concern incrementally we have taken into account by reducing our rates for the back book, so that we are very sure that the prepayment rates which have come off now are largely where we are going to be in the future.
So, for example, if you see this pricing strategy, is in vogue last year for about 5 months. So we just started in the month of November till March. So it's about 5 months, right? So if you see the impact, at least for first 1 year or so, so the impact in margin contraction will be largely from the repricing out of the portfolio than incremental business. So what will happen after 1 year, because if you look at any company, 80% of portfolio would be last 3 years sourcing. So at a portfolio level, we are at about 42% of portfolio is repriced.
What is the 42?
22.
22, sorry. Okay, 22.
So
I'll come back. Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, I'll come back. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pranav Gupta from Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Good afternoon, and thanks for giving me an opportunity. So I have 2 questions, both on the margin front. So firstly, you spoke about this strategy of going aggressive on pricing to get growth. largely driven by the fact that banks are aggressive in this space now. And you see this strategy subsiding once banks also have other avenues to grow. Just want to understand, sir, that given the current context, a lot of banks have seen a lot of pain in the unsecured book, and they are talking of incrementally doing more of secured loans, and especially the housing space. Say if this strategy from the bank does not come off and they continue to be aggressive, how do we look at the margins on a more longer term basis? Probably 2-3 years. That is the first question.
Okay. So assuming that we feel that in next year or so, I think it should get back to the situation which was pre-COVID. So if that happens, then we would get back to our earlier way of doing business. Maybe the gap may not be that much. Assuming that it may take a little longer time, let's say next 2 or 3 years time, for banks to really pull off focus from mortgage, then we would you will see our margins being slightly lower, more than 3, more than 2.4 on NIM and spread from Can Fin on a large volume. So I think it locks it there.
Okay. So just so that I understand this correctly, say the strategy does not come off from the bank, we are looking at a more growth versus a higher level of profitability sort of a strategy in the longer term.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So second question is on the funding mix. So we've seen obviously bank funding still contributes a large chunk of your overall mix, almost 52%, and just wanted to understand what part of what percentage of this book would be linked to very low tenure MCLRs, probably 3 months or 6 months.
Most of the loans are term loans and it is long term. So it will be 7 to 10 years.
No, I was asking about linkages to the MCLR, sir. What percentage would be linked to very short term MCLRs for the bank funding?
No, all the loans are linked to either MCLR or our external benchmark. So it depends. So these are long-term loans. The tenure varies between 7 to 10 years. And we have some old loans which is 15 years from NHB. Right? Now, all these loans are either linked to MCLR or repo, but the tenure is long. So, whenever there is, for example, let's say there is a loan linked to MCLR. So, whenever the bank changes MCLR, there is an impact on our portfolio either with respect to rates either going up or going down. But all the loans are long term. And all the loans are either linked to repo or MCLR.
No, I understand that, sir. Just wanted to understand that what percentage of the MCLR linked loan would be linked to, say, a 3-month or a 6-month MCLR? No, I'm not talking about the tenure of the loans. I understand that they're long tenure loans.
3 months. So MCLR is either 1 month or 3 months. Some banks are at 3 and some banks are at 1.
Okay. None of the bank funding would be sort of linked to a 1-year MCLR, if I understand that correctly.
No, not at all. See, because higher the MCLR, obviously the rate will be higher. So today we are enjoying low cost of funds. So our effort is to ensure that all the banks move to 1 month MCLR, but I think some banks, they have their internal policy. So therefore their 3 months MCLR itself would be quite less, which can be comparable with certain banks 1 month MCLR. So we are actually agnostic with respect to whether it is 1 month or 3 months. We are worried about the landing cost. As long as it fits into our cost strategy, we are okay with that.
Understood, sir. So just last one follow up on this part only. Right now, we are enjoying a lower cost of funding, which is why we are able to go aggressive on the yield side as well to get growth. But say we start seeing some sort of hikes in the interest rates in the more medium term. How do we manage this upward repricing of MCLR or MCLR linked loans?
One is we'll reprice the portfolio. Number 2, we will also increase our yields by increasing rates for incremental sourcing. See, we have done that for many years. Now, to ensure that we keep growing at a healthy rate, we have adopted this strategy. So once the time is right, we will get back to our earlier strategy.
So I have more questions, but I'll come back in the queue.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Piran Engineer from Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. I have a couple of questions similar to what has already been asked. The prior person asked, what is our incremental cost of bank borrowing? If you can just tell us that.
Incremental cost of bank borrowing?
Yeah, bank borrowing. Because the reason I'm asking is that we can't always keep incrementally borrowing from CPs, and my sense is that this 4.5% incremental cost of funds is not going to be sustainable. So if you can just guide us as to what your incremental cost of bank borrowing is, that will be helpful.
So incremental borrowing from banks is about 5.5.
Okay.
I again want to reiterate, for benefit of all of us. So the way we leverage, by raising CP is only as a backup. For example, if I'm raising 500 crores of CP, I should have 500 crores of unutilized limit in my OD. If I don't have, I will not raise CP. So we don't use CP for funding. We use CP only for cost reduction.
Correct. No, I agree with that, sir. And the second question is, what percentage of our back book, or rather, over the last 2 quarters, how much have we reduced yields on the back book?
So, for example, if you see our portfolio cost of funds was in the range of 8%, now it is 6.87. So incremental is 4.5 cost of funds. On portfolio it is 6.87. So we have repriced most of the loans.
No. Oh, sorry. I meant, when I said loans, I meant your loans to customers, home loans, LAP, etc. In the last 2 months, our incremental loans have been at 6.97, but in the back book, how much have we repriced them downwards over the last 2 quarters?
Our incremental is now not 6.95. We have increased the rates from April, now it is 7.25. So, for different products it's different. So we have actually increased our rates from April onwards, right? So if you look at last 2 quarters, definitely, it was an offer. So our rack rate was different, and we had an offer for a limited period, and therefore that would have an impact on the margins for 1 year, and then it will get repriced to the rack rate. So if you see the impact wouldn't be much.
No, so I think I'm not being clear. My limited question is, you say the loans that were originated 1, 2, 3 years back, have they been repriced down to, the rate of 7.25 also, or are they significantly higher than that?
No, as I mentioned, at a portfolio level, 22% of the portfolio is repriced. And 22% of portfolio is repriced. At what rate, it depends on what is the risk rating of the customer and what is the type of product. For example, if it is self-employed customer with high risk, the rate may not be 6.95. The rate could be 7.5.
Got it.
So we have repriced 22%, but all 22 is not at 6.95. That's the question. All 22% of portfolio is not repriced at 6.95. That's the answer. I hope I was able to clarify your doubt.
Yeah, no, now it does. So then what is the risk when the remaining 78% also slowly reprices? And given the fact that we don't have much downside benefit on cost of funds anymore, I think cost of funds have bottomed out. Do you think there is a risk that our incremental spreads actually come below 2% compared to the guided range of 2.4?
No, we would not. I think that is what I have mentioned. So if the rate starts increasing, then the BT out pressure will come down. So
okay.
We would not face that challenge at all. Then we also would try to reprice loans on the higher side.
Okay, got it. That's all from my end. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhijit from Sundaram Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Thanks for taking the question. Sir, I have 2 questions. First one is,
I'm not asking a very, very near-term question. If the current restrictions, economic restrictions or activity restrictions were to continue, do you think any changes to underwriting policies will happen from banks and institutions like Can Fin, in the sense any tightening? Also, second point is on the same thing. If the demand from borrowers were to recover, in your opinion, will there be some reluctance till the time situation were to normalize in terms of business activity coming back? Will there be any reluctance from the lender side to sort of source these loans and also sanction or disperse? What's your opinion? Very, very near-term question. Thank you. And I have one more question and follow-up. Yeah.
Sure. So, if you see after COVID wave 1, we had not changed anything to the policy, but we had tightened up process. So what we had tightened, that we have restored it back. Now, we will see if it requires to again tighten the process after the second wave, we would do that. But that would not, impact customer either with respect to eligibility or the loan tenor. So it would not impact at all. See, the only thing is we will do certain little more due diligence on the customer. So it would not really impact. So if demand is back, we'll be able to grow our business very well. And because of COVID second wave, if the lockdown continues, the impact is going to be for us, which is to the entire industry.
So just to clarify, even if the demand from borrowers were to be back, there might be some reluctance, until the activity comes back.
So which we have seen already, because self-employed as a mix has come down, so salary has increased. So we feel that this will continue for another 3 to 4 quarters. Till we are completely out of COVID, we will see this trend. So what we are trying to do, our decrease in STNP share, we are trying to cover that by increasing our share in salary.
Sure. So second question, sir, is on the incremental loans which are getting sourced, how is the credit profile of these borrowers versus the one which you have raised before the competition from the bank intensified?
So the book which we were losing earlier, now we are not losing that kind of book, right? Yeah, we lose, but the number is very small. So the profiles, obviously, it ranges from very good to average kind of customers. So it is a mix of all the three, because since there was pressure due to COVID, and otherwise generally BT out will be only good set of customers. But this time we have seen a trend that it is not just very good customers. It is very good, and average. When I say very good, customer repayment track record is excellent. When I talk about good customers, you can see 1 or 2 bounce in last 12 months. When I say average, you can see those kind of cases either getting into SMA 0 or 1 once in last 12 months. So we have seen little change in last 1 year that BT out was on all these 3 buckets.
Sorry, let me just repeat the question. If we were to look at risk-based returns, right, after assuming the potential credit cost and slippages, etc., versus the spread, are you satisfied with the new loans which you are originating versus what used to happen pre-COVID in FY 19, etc., FY 19 and 20? Or you think there the returns are getting squeezed?
I will be happy if my investors are happy. So basically, it's a call. I need to balance. If my growth is moderate, I'll be high in profitability. If my growth has to be high, I'll have to align with some of the big players, and therefore my profitability will be moderate. So as of now, we have chosen the path of high growth and moderate profitability. And when it is conducive, and if we have to, definitely we'll have feelers from my investors, then if we feel that we need to get back to moderate growth and high profitability, we would not hesitate to do that.
Okay. Sure. Just one last question, sir. Sorry for this. Can you comment on the collection efficiencies in April in the early trend? Any concerns you are having on the collection efficiency?
I would not be able to give the numbers, but yes, collection efficiency compared to Jan, February, March, April was less, definitely less. No, this was true in quarter 1 and quarter 2 of last year. So I think April collections has come down. So we should see how it will be in May. And this is true for all the companies. I think you must be hearing this all over. So definitely, because 15 days of lockdown across the country, even though announced by state government, will definitely have impact on collection.
Thank you. We will request the current participant to please come back with the question for any follow-up questions. The next question is from the line of Sayantan Bhaumik from PineBridge Investments. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity. I had a few questions. First thing I wanted to understand, you mentioned in the beginning, and in the answer to some other questions, that this quarter's expenses were higher due to some investments in IT. If you could just elaborate on what are we doing with respect to spendings on IT, and then what are there any further gaps we think we need to spend in the IT segment? That's my first question. Second question is, if I remember correctly, last year our spending on CSR was lower than the required or the 2% that is what is prescribed. Have we spent sufficiently in March in the financial year 2021? And what are we doing with respect to supporting the community or the industry with respect to COVID? Is the company doing anything special or different in this segment? So these are my two questions.
Okay. In terms of absolute numbers, spend on IT is 2.5 crores.
So it's not so much about the money. I'm just trying to understand what are we doing with respect to the spend, as in what is it? What are we doing different in terms of the IT spend?
No. See, I think there are two things. One is we have strengthened our lease line capacity. That's one. And number two, some bit was spent on digitization. Now, with respect to CSR, last year we spent the entire amount. And if you see, close to 45 to 50% we've spent on COVID, supporting state government, supporting central government, and also supporting other than digital government through various hospitals, which would indirectly or directly support the COVID patients.
Okay. Would that be the same thing this year as well?
I think so, because looking at wave 2, I think so we would at least, we'll be committed to spending about 35 to 40% for COVID. Maybe it could be even more. It depends on, how serious this would be in future as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sanket Chheda from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello. Sir, my question was that as of last quarter, our overdue accounts, other than the NPAs, were about 400 crores. So where that pool stands, it has reduced from there?
Generally, we don't share details less than 90 DPD. All I can say is that you have seen for last 1 year, during COVID, after COVID, how our asset quality has held, right? And you also last couple of conference calls, they also give you an indication as to what is the total delinquent pool, of the industry given a certain mix. All I can say is that we are the lowest, and we will ensure that we will maintain our asset quality going forward as well.
Sure, sir. So my next question is on growth again, not particular to quarter 2 or 3. What would be our growth trajectory for say next 3-4 years? Are we looking to continue at that 18 to 20% run rate? And within that, question on our yields or margins on this
तुम्ही ज्या व्यक्तीशी बोलत आहात त्याने तुमच्या कॉलला होल्डवर ठेवला आहे. कृपया लाईनवरच राहा. The person you are speaking with has put your call on hold. Please.
Yeah, just to answer your question, definitely we want to grow 20+%. It all depends on COVID second wave. Otherwise, our growth plan is intact. And as far as margins, I've already indicated we will protect 3 and 2.4.
Yeah, no. So my questions got cut. On margin, I was asking that whether the cost of funds goes up, it is likely to go up systematically. So on relative basis in HFT space, our cost of funds are now almost identical to HDFC and much lower than all the other HFTs. So that relative advantage is likely to continue. Is that understanding correct because of the NHB benefit? And on bank side, the key change that has happened is, as you had highlighted earlier, that we are getting funds almost at a rate at which a AAA rated corporate would get. So one is that relative advantage will continue. Is that a right understanding? And second, since we are in the sweet spot, are we looking to target a slightly higher ticket size portfolio, wherein based on the cost leadership we could acquire some quality customers and also entail higher growth without taking too much of a risk?
Your understanding is right. Yes, that is our plan. And if you see, our ticket size has gone up from 18 lakhs to 20 lakhs. So, because we are now focusing on few other segments, which will help us to grow our book much faster without taking any incremental risk from our book.
Okay. And so last question, again, on the balance between growth and return ratios. So currently this year, including the Q4 impact, we did a ROA of 2.2. Now going ahead for at least FY21 and some bit of FY22 and some bit of FY23, do we see ROAs stabilizing at 2% from 2.2 or going down from there also? How do we see that?
That I will leave it to you for calculation. So I've given you the growth rate. I've given you, some kind of guidance on the asset quality. I think you are experts on calculating those ratios.
Thank you. Again, we would request you to please come back in that question queue for any follow-up questions. The next question is from the line of Jigar Mistry from Buoyant Capital. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, sir. I had one clarification. So, if I understand the chronology right, then there were BT outs which actually forced Can Fin Home to reduce the rates. After that, 22% of the portfolio back book has been repriced. The question, sir, is that why is the other 78 not repriced? And why are they not beating it out if the rate are significantly higher than what the incremental risk-adjusted rates would be?
If you look at any company, you would have a portfolio at different yields. Some of the customers would come forward to reprice their loan. Some of the customers, the repricing happens automatically because we have both the options. So, just to answer that question, this happens over a period of time. It will not happen, in the span of 2 to 3 months time. It will happen over a period of time. But eventually, I think most of the portfolio will get repriced. In the meanwhile, if the rate goes up, then the repricing may not happen. Or if the rate goes up substantially, it can happen on the higher side. Because we also reduce the portfolio rate of all the customers at a portfolio level. We also do that. So that happens on a default mode. Now beyond that, if yeah.
No, sir, that is amply clear. The only other follow-up is that on a risk-adjusted basis for that 78%, the portfolio yields versus the incremental yields, how much would that difference be? Again, everybody would be at different rates, but if you adjust for that risk, on an incremental basis, what is the difference between the portfolio back book versus the incremental rates?
So portfolio yield now is 9.49 and incremental is little less than 8%.
For that 78%?
Exactly. So this 9.49 is yield on the portfolio.
But that would include the 22% that has been repriced as well.
This would include, yeah.
So my question is that for the people who have not yet sort of adjusted their books, for them, if over the course of the next few months, let's take out the interest rate increase or decrease from the picture for now. If those two were to, over the course of next 3, 4, or 5 quarters, reprice their book, what would be the downward revision for that 78% that we would expect based on what the current incremental lending rates are?
So basically, that is what we have calculated, and therefore we said we will protect margin of 3 and 2.4, because this will happen over a period of time. And this, when we talk about 9.49, this used to be 10.17. So 10.17 came down to 9.79. So gradually this yield also would come down. But we are also sure that this will not last for too long. Maybe after a few quarters, rates will start inching up. So we would see if the rate goes up, we will reduce because our cost will go down. Our yield also, we will ensure that we will price it appropriately to maintain the margin. If rate goes up, we'll increase our yield. If rate goes down, we'll decrease our yield.
The only thing, sir, is that it's a little bit counterintuitive, because if the incremental spread or incremental NIM is 2.4, it would stand to reason that for the back book that has not been repriced, it would not have the same 2.4% NIM. It would actually have a much higher NIM, which would tend to go down as the assets get repriced. But you are saying that that isn't really the case.
So today, if you look at our yield on portfolio, it is 9.49. If you look at cost on portfolio, it is 6.87. So
all right.
We have this trick to track even going forward. So we will see what is the cost on portfolio and what is the yield on portfolio. Not just incremental, even on the portfolio.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nirmal Bari from Sameeksha Capital. Please go ahead.
So thank you. So my first question is actually on the 87% salaried customer base that we have acquired in the previous quarter or so. So if you can describe how similar or different is this customer base from the customers that we were acquiring say a year back and so, in terms of their credit scores as well as in terms of their income ranges and all.
So it's not 89, it is 83%. 83% was from salaried incrementally in quarter 4. So if I have to compare the profiles, earlier we were sourcing salaried customers from private and government whose average income was in the range of 40 to 42,000 per month. Now the change is that the income would go right up to 1.5 lakhs, and which would typically be from a Cat A or Cat B corporate, going in for a Cat A or Cat B developer properties. So that's the difference.
So sir, the second question is slightly related to this. Given that most customers will be coming to us only because of our only. So now when 4 quarters or 6 quarters down the line, we think of increasing the rates, and when the market environment becomes such and are increasing the rates to 50 bips of the lowest HFC or the largest HFC, what incentive would this customer base have to stay with us? So why won't there be higher BT outs going forward?
So basically, if the difference in rate is up to 0.4 or 0.5%, customers would not do BT out. So once the rate crosses 0.5, that is when customer would do it, because the cost of moving also would be substantially high. So we will try and balance that.
Okay. Second is on the digital spends. You gave some description to a previous participant, but I would like to know in further detail, like the kind of customer base that we are now targeting. it is very digital savvy and tech savvy, and wouldn't like so much of a physical interface as is typically there with Can Fin. So what are we doing on the digital side to ensure a smoother customer journey, as well as to take some of the processes that are being handled physically to take them online?
So this is work in progress. So we are in a transition stage. It will take some more time, but we are on with respect to automation and digitalization. Some of the processes, we will digitize, and some of the sourcing, we will try to strengthen. For example, we will eventually get into online sourcing and tab sourcing. We will integrate with various APIs. So we will strengthen our digital space with respect to sourcing. We can't really get to pre-approved, but we will definitely reach a stage where we can approve on a pre-qualified basis.
Okay. And my last question is on this 22% of the book. It's actually a clarification that you said that 22% of the book has been repriced. So when we talk of this 22%, this was the total book that was outstanding as of November. Of that, 22% has been repriced. Is that correct?
No, this is the total book as of March end, and we saw what is the percentage of books which got repriced.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sonal Minhas from Prescient Capital. Please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
So just carrying forward on the last question on the profile of customers you mentioned, moving from the salary limit that you were talking about, I also wanted to have a clarificatory question on are we sticking to customers for whom this is the first home loan, or that limit is also getting relaxed? Just trying to understand, this is the first home loan for those customers?
No, in our earlier model, we were sourcing slightly higher proportion of customers who are new to company for home.
Okay.
So now since we become aggressive on pricing and we are present in most of the bigger geographies, so we will have customers. So for them it will be a second property, but for self-use, or for some it could be even third. So when I say second, third, it means that customer would have bought a property, sold, again would have come for loan, maybe 2 or 3 transactions. So now you will see this mix, which would be in line with most of the other HFCs, but the proportion would change.
Got it. And sir, a follow-on question on this. I know this is difficult to answer or put a number to. Earlier in our earlier model of 15-18% growth, we used to be in an NPA of gross NPA of around 0.5% and an ROE of I think north of 18%, risk adjusted. I just wanted to know, is this 0.5% now would be tending to more 1% if I were to look at 1 year, 2 year down the line, and our yields would be higher, and hence the ROEs would remain in the same range? Just maybe because there will be some internal calculations on strategy on what would this lead to in 2-3 years from an NPA perspective, from an ROE perspective. Just trying to understand that.
See, since we are into secured and especially mortgage, we have various legal recourse, right? It's only a question of timing. So, to answer your question, will we be able to reach to our earlier NPA level? The answer is yes, maybe with an exception of 10 to 20% being higher. But it's a question of time, because maybe in next 3 years' time, any company for that matter would be at about 20-25% higher than the earlier NPA level.
Got it. Okay.
Why I'm saying this is that it also depends from company to company. It also depends on how well you are secured. See, because now when we underwrite, we predominantly look at 2 things. One is customer capable? One is capability, and second is what is the collateral value? Now, there is some kind of hit on capability because of COVID, right? However, as long as you're covered on the property value side, so eventually the company would not make any loss, and therefore I'm saying it's only a question of time. And if the company gets into legal recourse, then company will be able to recover most of its loan.
Got it.
assets, and therefore I said that you will see a spike of 25% from the earlier levels, and this could be true for any company, right?
Got it. And so just from an organization perspective, because I think these are, if I may just generalize this, these are territories where you've not operated in the recent past. Is your mid to senior level management geared to, first of all, manage this kind of a growth and also understand from a process perspective what is the risk involved in this? Because I think we all love what Can Fin has achieved in the last, I think, 7-8 years. Just trying to understand from a bottoms-up perspective that what is it that is happening from a bottoms-up perspective? Have you recruited somebody who understands this business of giving loans to, let's say, somebody who's a second property owner, third property owner, or giving collaterals, maybe some more top-up loans? So there is a little bit of a different mindset that is required. I understand. So I just want to understand that from an org perspective of view. What has happened inside in terms of key people or org changes?
So if you look at this change is not now. This change started about 1.5 years back.
Okay.
Now it only accelerated because of our change in pricing strategy now.
Got it. Okay.
When we talk about employee mindset to deal with this profile of customers, so we can broadly, bucket this into 3 buckets. So one is, in the upcountry locations, could be tier 3 or 4. Kind of cities. Number 2, in main cities within the city and in the outskirts. So, for example, let's say a city branch manager would be competent enough to deal with high-profile customers, onboard, customers into a fold. And similarly, branches which are in the outskirts or branches which are in small towns would have a profile, such that they'll be able to deal with those kind of customers. So basically, it all depends on the seniority and maturity of the branch managers to deal with these kind of customers. So our hiring strategy also is aligned to our sourcing strategy.
Got it. Okay, so that is the transition that you were basically talking about for the last 1.5 years you've been doing.
Yeah.
And sir, just I think you mentioned that you are aligning yourself more to what your investors want you to do. I think maybe that was I just picked it up in the call. Just want to know what is the reason for this transition? Is this something you see your turf being questioned and hence you've moved on, being on the call for the last 1.5 years? Just trying to understand, to be very honest, little bit provocative also, why listen to investors? Like it's your business, you running it. Why listen to investors at all? I think investors are usually very short-term oriented in their mindset. So including us. So why have that mindset at all? I think just trying to understand why do it at all.
So basically, we believe in adding value to our customers and investors. Now, from investors' point of view, I think there should be value accretion, a quarter on quarter or maybe year on year. If that has to happen, definitely company has to do well. And when we say company has to do well, company has to do well on increased, regularly increasing the book. So we found that whatever investors, certainly gave us feedback, is a lot of value in that, and therefore we align to that. So, definitely, we also want to add value to our customers.
And it is. Sorry, you continue.
Yeah.
I'll just have
there is no there is nothing called as a good model or a bad model, right?
Okay.
It all depends. For example, a company with a yield of, let's say, 14% or 15% can afford to have 2.5% of NPA.
Yeah.
A company with a yield of, let's say, 9%, can't afford to have more than 1% of NPA, right?
Yes.
So there's nothing called as good or right or wrong model. But we thought, as a company, we were short of growth. We also realized that it's a fact that we are short of growth, and therefore we wanted to grow, and therefore we have aligned a strategy which also coincided with what the investors felt, and therefore I would say it's a collaborative effort, in terms of thought process, so that we also want to grow, which also probably is liked by most of our investors.
Got it. Understand. And there is no doubt around growth being funneled for stake sale out in the next 1 or 2 years, or something aligned on strategic front in the company? There is nothing aligned on that, which is leading to this aggressive mindset.
I can only tell that we are not privy to that stake sale transaction after the second stake sale event panned out. So our strategy is more from operations point of view and adding value to our to all the stakeholders, which is regulator, customers, and investors. So this growth strategy has got nothing to do with stake sale.
Got it, sir. That is it from my side. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Gurpreet Arora from Aviva Life India. Please go ahead.
My questions have been answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sakshi Goenka from Alchemy Capital. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Sir, just one clarification. So could you explain what, so you said that your yield on portfolio is about 9.5. So if I calculate the yield, it comes to about 8.5. Just wanted to understand this 1 percentage point discrepancy. Any thoughts? Is there any interest reversal which is happening on the interest income side this quarter, which is leading to such a big gap? Generally, the gap is not so big between your stated yield and your calculated yield, sir.
Madam, it is the yield calculation I explained earlier. It is on the actual loan for a given rate for a given period. If the system generated calculation, the variance will not come into picture. It is, you cannot take the portfolio quarter-on-quarter basis or anything. It is a particular loan-wise calculation, and the calculation is correct. As correct, madam. 9.43 is the actual yield.
Sure, sir. Got it. Got it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bhavya Sanghi from Fortress Group. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sarvesh Gupta from Maximal Capital. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir, and thanks for taking my question. Sir, first thing is for the Q4, can give the breakup of BT out, BT in, and the natural rundown on the portfolio?
So as I mentioned, our BT out is 90 crores. In quarter 4, we have done 2,000 crores of business, and BT out is 90 crores.
Yeah, and what will be the natural rundown on your portfolio in quarter 4?
I mentioned it was about 250 crores per quarter.
250.
Not natural, BT out.
Yes. And sir, second thing on this strategy of being content with a slightly lower spread. So one downside of that sort of a strategy is that while you lose your margins on probably the entire book over time, the growth is something that may or may not come. So one part of that growth is market share, relative gains in market share with respect to the banks who might be charging a little bit lower. But the other part is the market growth itself. So if you want to comment something on your market as you are looking at, where the things stand right now, if you are seeing some changes, tangible changes in terms of how your customers are behaving towards buying of real estate properties and how you expect that to pan out.
So if we talk about repricing of portfolio, so now the rate is not 6.95, it is 7.25. So if any customer wants to reprice, the rate will be 7.25, not 6.95. So already there is a 30 bps higher for repricing. So all I want to say is that irrespective of the repricing rate or the repricing rate, rate of repricing or the repricing rate, we will always maintain what margins we have told, that's 3 and 2.4. Because probably next quarter the repricing rate could be 5% or 7%, and repricing rate of interest could be much higher than 7.25, right? So the 6.95 is now history, and the 6.95, I think probably the percentage what got repriced will be about 20%. assuming that 2% would have happened in April. This is a guess. Total 22% is right. And how much in Q4, how much in April, that number I need to see, but I'm just giving an approximation. Out of 22%, 2% would have got repriced at a much higher rate than what it was in Q4. So I think it's a balancing act, and it's on a continuous process. So we will always watch out for portfolio yield, portfolio cost, and therefore the margins what we need to maintain. So there are both pros and cons in both the models, whether it is a high growth, moderate profitability, or high profitability, moderate growth. So we'll try and balance that.
Sure, sir. That I understand from a market share perspective vis-a-vis your competitors. My question was more related from a overall market perspective itself. So your core market has been, say, Karnataka salaried. So either you are seeing much higher growth rates in the overall market. Are you seeing some signs of it which is different from the last few years? And second is there can be other growth engines which is outside of salaried and outside of Karnataka. So are you seeing some more traction, or you have some strategy to sort of tap outside of your core segment? So wanted color on the market perspective, not from a market share perspective, which is dependent on how you price your loans.
So we have seen that the market is quite robust. We've seen that in Q3 and Q4, the market is very robust. So only thing is now it all depends on for how long wave 2 will last. However, there will be pent-up demand. What you've seen in wave 1, immediately after wave 1, market came back quite well. So the same thing is going to continue after wave 2 as well. So market is very, very huge. We have enlarged our segment, so I don't see any challenge in terms of growth at all. Yeah, it may so happen that for next 15 days we will not be able to do much business because of lockdown. Once the lockdown is lifted, then we will see normal business coming back. So I don't see any issue on the demand per se.
Okay. And similar to last year, we expect that the lost business which may accrue during the lockdown period should come back to us with equal vigor once the lockdown phase is over, especially in Karnataka.
Exactly. We've seen that happening in Q3 and Q4, so same thing would continue. It may get phased out, between 3 to 4 quarters, but we will see that coming back. So there will be a deferment of buying a property, but I don't think so it may get cancelled. Even if it gets cancelled, it will be a very small purchase.
Understood, sir. Thanks a lot for taking the question, and all the best for the coming quarters.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Gaurav Jani from Centrum Broking. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question, sir. Coming to the growth bit, I just want to thrust a bit on that. So if you look at the disbursements from FY 18 to 20, we typically did about 5,500 to about 5,700 crores, also factoring in the sort of lost disbursements that would have happened in FY 20, right, in the last 15 days of March. So to tie that up with the second wave and how do you look at FY 22? So what sort of a disbursement number could we look at? If you could just touch on that, and how could we achieve that number?
Our plan is about 20%, as I mentioned. So if there is lockdown for month and a half, I don't think so it is going to impact, especially on the business side, because we can definitely cover that. If it lasts beyond 1.5 months, then probably there will be slight moderation in the numbers.
So you mean 20% on the original base, right?
No, since I'm comparing with not last year, because last year was not normal. Last year.
Last year. Perfect. So last question is on the stage 2 numbers, although obviously you mentioned that you cannot disclose the numbers, but has it trended lower than, for example, FY 20? I mean, the annual report mentioned about a 6% number. So has it gone lower than that?
I'm not very sure where the 6% came from. All I'm saying is that the collection efficiency in April is definitely lesser than March, lesser than February, lesser than Jan.
No, I meant for the entire of FY 21. I mean, so versus as we ended FY20. So I just want to have a sense of that.
Sorry, I didn't get your question. I thought your question was the 6% SMA, correct?
Yeah, SMA 2 numbers were mentioned in the annual report for FY20. My question is, how would that have trended for the entire of FY21 as we close FY21? Has it trended lower?
FY21 we did extremely well. FY21 was great.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
See, that also reflects in our GNPA number. So come to Q3, which was 0.99, it came down to 0.91.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. We take the last question from Avinash Sanavde from Dalal & Broacha. Please go ahead. Avinash, your line is in talk mode. You can go ahead, please.
Hello, sir. What is our how many branches you are looking to add for next 2 years?
Every year we have planned to add about 15 branches. So maybe this year we'll add more because last year we couldn't add what we had targeted. So you can take the number as about 18 to 20.
And when I compare, when we have compared with some companies like Aavas, Home First, they are charging the yields of over 12 to 13%, and they are able to maintain their asset quality. So, and we have over the years of experience in terms of housing loans. Why we are not targeting that kind of customers who can pay us higher yields, or what is your thought process on that?
Basically, our customer profile cannot be compared with the company you mentioned because our mix is different, and for salaried we assess based on documented income. So we take payslip, we take bank statement, we take IDR. As far as non-salaried is concerned, we go by only declared income. So it is not an assessment model. So these two are not comparable. So we can be more compared with the likes of HDFC, IC Housing, so because all these companies would assess based on documented income.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sir. Thank you. That's it from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last question. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Utsav Bhogewal for closing comments.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Yeah.
So thank you all the investors for attending this call. It's really encouraging with your ongoing support. With all your support and encouragement, I think we were able to tread through last year, which was the most difficult year, at least in my experience of last 25 years in this industry. We look forward to do well in the coming quarters. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you. On behalf of Investec Capital Services, that concludes the conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your line.